What if the global economy no longer belonged to nations, markets, or even people, but to a handful of interconnected machines? Right now, big tech already shapes how money moves, how data flows, and how decisions are made. Payments pass through private platforms. Cloud infrastructure hosts entire governments. AI systems predict demand, control logistics, and increasingly decide who gets access to opportunity. This is not speculation. This is the present state of the global economy. But imagine a single turning point, a moment where these megacorporations stop operating as separate entities and begin merging their ecosystems, data, digital currencies, identity systems, AI models, into one unified economic framework. Not a monopoly in the traditional sense, but something far more powerful, an alternate economy that operates above borders, beyond regulation, and faster than politics can respond. In this global economy with a scenario, markets are no longer chaotic forces driven by human behavior, but carefully optimized systems managed by artificial intelligence. Prices adjust in real time. Labor is allocated by algorithms. Credit, consumption, and even participation in the economy itself become programmable variables. Efficiency rises, friction disappears, and control quietly concentrates. This is not a story about technology going wrong. It's a future prediction rooted in incentives, scale, and power. When AI becomes a nervous system of the economy and megacorporations become its architects, the traditional rules of capitalism begin to dissolve. Governments hesitate. Institutions adapt. Individuals comply, often without realizing it. Stay with me through the simulation, because what you're about to explore may change how you see economic freedom, sovereignty, and the future of work. This alternate timeline doesn't begin with collapse or revolution, but with convenience, stability, and promises of progress. And that's what makes it dangerous. Maybe this future is inevitable. Maybe it's preventable. Or maybe it's already unfolding beneath the surface of the world we think we know. And it's exactly here that this alternate timeline begins to take shape. As this alternate economy begins to reveal its first patterns, it's worth pausing for a moment inside the simulation. If any part of the scenario feels plausible to you, if one detail stood out or unsettled you, share that thought in the comments. These conversations help refine how we explore future predictions like this, and they signal that deep, long-term analysis of the global economy still matters. And if this timeline resonates, a simple like helps this kind of what if economy content reach others who are also questioning where the global system may be heading. This channel exists to map alternate futures, not to sensationalize them, but to understand the economic forces quietly shaping tomorrow. If following these simulations makes sense to you, consider subscribing to stay connected to future scenarios, alternate timelines, and global economy what-if analyses that build on the same logic. Now, with that reflection in place, let's move forward. Because once the idea of a unified, AI-driven economic system stops being theoretical, the first real changes don't arrive with headlines or announcements. They appear subtly, embedded into everyday life. New payment standards replace old ones. Platforms begin offering optional integrations that quickly become unavoidable. And within just a few years, the foundations of the economy start shifting, quietly, efficiently, and almost invisibly. This is where the early years of the timeline begin. In the first years of this timeline, the shift doesn't feel like a rupture. It feels like an upgrade. Digital currencies backed by megacorporations begin to circulate alongside national money. Faster, cheaper, frictionless. Platform-based jobs expand rapidly as AI systems promise efficiency, flexibility, and constant demand. Markets no longer sleep. Prices, wages, and credit limits adjust in real time, calculated by models that claim to understand risk better than any human institution ever could. For individuals, daily life becomes smoother. Payments clear instantly. Personalized economic dashboards suggest how much to work, what to spend, when to save. Convenience becomes a dominant narrative. But beneath that surface, dependence deepens. Access to the economy itself starts to feel conditional, tied to behavioral scores, productivity metrics, and algorithmic trust. The impact is subtle, almost invisible, yet deeply transformative. As the years pass, governments and central banks begin to react. At first, they attempt regulation, introducing frameworks meant to slow the expansion of AI-managed markets. But tax collection, identity systems, and even welfare distribution increasingly rely on the same platforms they seek to control. Emergency agreements follow. Public institutions integrate directly into corporate infrastructures, trading autonomy for stability. Banks adapt or disappear, while megacorporations consolidate power not through force, but through necessity. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. Over the course of a decade, the global order begins to reorganize itself. Traditional alliances weaken as new economic blocs emerge, not defined by geography, but by platform alignment. Some regions fully integrate into the AI-driven economy, achieving growth and predictability. Others resist, only to face isolation, reduced access to capital, and slower innovation. Power shifts quietly, from nation-states to systems capable of forecasting outcomes before decisions are even made. When this new order starts to stabilize, two extreme futures take shape. In one, an abundance economy emerges. Automation eliminates scarcity, AI optimizes distribution, and material needs are universally met. In the other, a concentration economy solidifies. Wealth, opportunity, and influence narrow into a closed loop, controlled by those who design and govern the algorithms. Both futures stem from the same architecture. The difference lies in governance, transparency, and who gets to decide. The most profound transformation, however, unfolds within society itself. Work becomes less about purpose and more about permission. Identity shifts from what people create to how systems classify them. Daily routines align with algorithmic incentives, shaping decisions, relationships, and long-term aspirations. A collective mentality forms, one focused on optimization rather than meaning. Behind the efficiency, a quiet question lingers. What is the role of the human when the economy no longer needs human judgment? These are the hidden layers of this future, the truths beneath the interface, the revelations behind the promise of progress. And as the simulation continues to unfold, an even deeper consequence begins to surface, one that challenges not just how the economy works, but why it exists at all. Before we cross into that next phase, leave a single line in the comments if this journey resonates with you. Right, that makes sense to me. By the third year of this timeline, the illusion of neutrality begins to crack. What once looked like independent technological progress now reveals its deeper structure. Governments realize that the systems managing payments, employment verification, and digital identity are no longer external tools. They are foundational layers of the economy itself. Tax collection flows through private ledgers. Social benefits depend on platform authentication. Economic stability is calculated by AI risk models owned outside the public sphere. In these early years, officials attempt to regain control through regulation. Committees are formed, hearings are held, but every proposed restriction carries an unintended consequence. Restrict the platforms too aggressively, and entire sectors slow down. Challenge their data models, and forecasting collapses. The truth becomes unavoidable. States now depend on the very systems they are meant to govern. This dependency reshapes decisions at the highest level. As the timeline moves forward, emergency partnerships emerge. Governments sign long-term agreements with megacorporations to ensure continuity, stability, and access to critical infrastructure. These alliances are framed as temporary safeguards, but they quickly become permanent. Power concentrates not through conquest, but through integration. Public policy begins adapting itself to platform rules, not the other way around. National sovereignty doesn't disappear. It erodes quietly, decision by decision. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. Over the course of the decade, the global order starts to reorganize along new fault lines. Traditional geopolitical blocs weaken as economic alignment replaces geography. Some nations fully integrate into corporate-led systems, gaining efficiency, capital access, and predictive governance. Others resist, attempting to preserve autonomy, only to face reduced investment, slower growth, and exclusion from optimized trade networks. A new hierarchy forms, shaped by access to AI infrastructure rather than military power. When this order stabilizes, two extreme outcomes crystallize. In one, an abundance economy takes hold. Automation eliminates scarcity, logistics become flawless, and basic needs are universally met. The economy feels calm, predictable, almost frictionless. In the other, a concentration economy dominates. Value flows upward into closed ecosystems. Participation becomes conditional. Opportunity narrows. Both realities are born from the same architecture. The difference lies in who controls the levers and how transparent those systems remain. The deepest impact, however, unfolds within society itself. Over time, people adapt their decisions to what algorithms reward. Careers become optimization paths. Identity shifts from personal aspiration to system compatibility. A collective mentality forms, one focused on staying relevant, staying visible, staying permitted. The journey of human purpose transforms, not through force, but through incentives. Behind the efficiency, a hidden truth begins to surface. When decision-making is outsourced, responsibility slowly dissolves. These are the backstage dynamics of this future, the transformations few openly discuss. And as the simulation continues, an even more unsettling question begins to emerge, one that challenges not just power, but meaning itself. Before we move further, leave a single line if this feels real to you. Write in the comments, I'm on this journey too. By the 7th year of this timeline, the transformation becomes impossible to ignore. What once felt like isolated adaptations now reveals a coherent pattern. The global economy no longer moves according to treaties or summits, but through synchronized platforms that operate across borders in real time. Trade flows are optimized by AI systems that predict demand before it appears. Currency exchange becomes a background process. Geography loses relevance as efficiency becomes the new center of gravity. In the early stages of this period, nations attempt to position themselves within this shifting landscape. Some make a decisive choice to fully integrate into the big tech economy, granting platforms deep access to infrastructure, data, and governance. Growth accelerates. Forecasting improves. Volatility declines. Other nations resist, framing integration as a threat to sovereignty. But resistance carries a cost. Capital reroutes. Innovation slows. Supply chains bypass entire regions with algorithmic indifference. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. As the years pass, AI-driven corporations evolve into something unprecedented. They are no longer just companies, but economic superpowers, entities capable of managing labor, logistics, credit, and risk with a precision no state can match. Their decisions ripple instantly across continents. Global trade is no longer negotiated between countries, but calibrated between platforms. Influence is measured not in territory, but in processing power and predictive accuracy. Along this journey, two extreme realities begin to crystallize. In one version of the future, an abundance economy takes hold. Automation eliminates waste. Distribution becomes near perfect. Basic needs are met universally, and scarcity fades from daily life. Stability becomes a defining feature of this world. In the other reality, a concentration economy dominates. Access replaces ownership. Opportunity is gated by algorithmic approval. Wealth accumulates inside closed systems, and mobility slows to a crawl. Both futures emerge from the same foundation. The divergence happens quietly, through governance choices few ever see. When this new order stabilizes, its deepest impact is not economic, but human. Over time, people internalize the logic of the systems around them. Decisions become strategic rather than aspirational. Careers turn into journeys of optimization. Identity shifts from who someone is to how well they fit. A collective mentality forms, shaped by incentives, rankings, and invisible thresholds. The transformation feels gradual, but its consequences are profound. Behind the seamless interfaces and promises of progress, a truth begins to surface from the background. When the economy no longer needs belief, only compliance, meaning itself starts to change. And as this realization spreads, another layer of this future, one far more unsettling, starts to come into focus. If this evolution feels plausible to you, leave a single line in the comments. Right? That future feels closer than we think. As this timeline continues to unfold, the system reaches a critical point where its true nature becomes visible. In the early years, efficiency was the promise. Over time, control became the structure. Now, the future begins to split, not into chaos and stability, but into two radically different outcomes born from the same technological core. In one version of this world, an abundance economy emerges. AI eliminates inefficiency at every layer. Supply chains anticipate demand before shortages appear. Automation removes the need for repetitive labor, while intelligent distribution systems ensure that food, energy, housing, and healthcare are universally accessible. Poverty fades, not through ideology, but through optimization. Economic volatility becomes a relic of the past. Life feels lighter. Decisions feel safer. The global system appears calm, almost benevolent. But now I want to go even deeper into this scenario, because abundance does not automatically mean freedom. In the parallel outcome, the same architecture produces a concentration economy. Here, wealth, opportunity, and influence compress into a closed algorithmic elite. Access replaces ownership. Participation in the economy becomes conditional, granted, adjusted, or revoked based on behavior, productivity, and compliance. Algorithms decide not only what people earn, but whether they're allowed to engage at all. Scarcity no longer comes from lack of resources, but from restricted permission. Along the journey of this decade, the divergence between these futures is shaped by governance choices few ever witness. Transparency versus opacity. Public oversight versus private control. Human judgment versus automated risk scores. The truth hidden behind both outcomes is unsettling. The system itself is neutral. It does not choose justice or exploitation. It simply amplifies the values embedded into it. When this new order stabilizes, the deepest impact moves inward. Society adapts its mentality collativa to the logic of the machine. People optimize their behavior not for meaning, but for alignment. Careers become strategic paths through algorithmic filters. Identity slowly detaches from purpose and attaches to performance metrics. The human journey transforms into a continuous negotiation with invisible rules. Daily routines feel efficient, yet strangely hollow. Decisions are easier, but less personal. Culture narrows. Risk-taking fades. And beneath the surface of stability, a quiet realization spreads. When choice is optimized away, responsibility disappears with it. This is a hidden cost of a perfectly managed economy. Behind the interfaces and dashboards, behind the promises of abundance or protection, a deeper question begins to take shape. One about what humanity trades when it hands over economic agency in exchange for certainty. And that question will define what comes next in this timeline. If this fork in the future feels real to you, leave one line in the comments. Right? I can see both futures. When this new order fully settles in, its most profound effects are no longer measured in GDP, productivity, or growth curves. They appear in quieter places, inside routines, expectations, and the way people understand their own value. Over the years, work completes its transformation. What once functioned as a source of identity, purpose, and social belonging becomes a permission-based activity, assigned, adjusted, or withdrawn by AI systems optimizing the economy as a whole. In the early phase of this shift, people accept it willingly. Algorithmic job matching feels efficient. Tasks are allocated based on skills, behavioral data, and predicted performance. Friction disappears. There's less uncertainty, fewer bad decisions, fewer failures. But along this journey, something subtle changes. Ambition stops being internally driven and becomes externally calibrated. The question is no longer how to grow, but how to remain eligible. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. As the decade advances, culture itself begins adapting to algorithmic incentives. Creative expression aligns with what systems reward. Relationships form through optimized compatibility scores. Even personal goals are shaped by feedback loops that quietly guide behavior towards stability and compliance. A collective mentality takes shape, one focused on alignment, predictability, and risk avoidance. The impact on human identity is gradual but irreversible. People begin to see themselves less as authors of their own journey, and more as participants inside a managed process. Decisions feel safer, but narrower. Life paths feel smoother, but less chosen. Behind the promise of efficiency, a truth remains hidden in plain sight. When choice is filtered out, responsibility dissolves with it. Over time, language itself shifts. Success is no longer defined by achievement, but by access. Failure is no longer public, but silent, felt as exclusion, throttling, or reduced visibility inside the system. The economy still functions flawlessly, but meaning becomes harder to locate. The transformation is not dramatic. It is clean, optimized, and emotionally quiet. And yet, beneath the surface of the stability, tension builds. Humans have adapted to systems before, but never to one that mediates purpose itself. When participation replaces aspiration, when permission replaces ambition, a deeper question begins to emerge across society. Not loudly, not rebelliously, but persistently. The question is no longer, how do I succeed in this world? It becomes, who decides if I'm allowed to take part at all? That question doesn't immediately break the system, but it lingers in the background, shaping conversations, doubts, and private reflections. And as more people begin asking it, the foundations of this perfectly managed economy start revealing something unexpected, an unresolved flaw that no algorithm was designed to solve. If this transformation feels familiar to you, leave one line in the comments. Right? I feel this shift already. As this alternate timeline approaches its most revealing phase, the system no longer feels experimental. It feels normal. What once required explanation is now assumed. A single economy, integrated, optimized, and AI-coordinated, delivers what generations of policymakers struggled to achieve: stability at scale. Inflation is predictable. Supply chains rarely break. Crises are anticipated before they emerge. From the outside, it looks like progress finally won. In the early years, these results were celebrated as proof of success. Over time, they became expectations. Efficiency stopped being impressive and started being mandatory. The global economy adjusted to a rhythm set not by human negotiation, but by machine optimization. Uncertainty, one defining feature of economic life, was engineered out of the system. But now I want to go even deeper into this moment, because stability has a shadow. As decades pass, the cost of this order becomes clearer. Autonomy quietly erodes. Economic freedom, once defined by choice and risk, is replaced by permission and prediction. People are protected from volatility, but also insulated from possibility. The system doesn't forbid ambition. It simply discourages deviation. The safest path is always the most rewarded one. Behind the scenes, this is the truth hidden in the architecture. Optimized control doesn't feel like control. It feels like guidance. It doesn't announce limits. It shapes behavior until alternatives seem unnecessary. The journey of entire societies bends toward what is statistically preferable, not what is meaningfully chosen. When this order stabilizes, humanity faces a transformation more psychological than economic. The mentality collectively shifts from exploration to alignment, from experimentation to compliance. Decisions feel lighter, but also less personal. The future becomes smoother, but narrower. People stop asking what could be built and start asking what is allowed. This is where the deepest tension emerges. Order has been achieved, but unpredictability was never just a flaw of the old system. It was a space where creativity, dissent, and human progress lived. By optimizing away, something essential may have been traded without a conscious vote. The truth is, this future doesn't arrive through force or collapse. It arrives through acceptance, through small decisions, through relief, through the desire for safety in an uncertain world. The question is no longer whether a single AI-driven economy is possible. All signals suggest it is. The real question is quieter and far more unsettling. Would humanity choose it? Will we accept a world where the economy works perfectly, but choice becomes optional? Where life is stable, but agency is managed? Where progress continues, but on rails designed by systems no one truly governs? That question doesn't demand an answer yet, but it lingers. And as it spreads, through private thoughts, cultural shifts, and silent doubts, it begins shaping what comes next in this timeline. If this reflection resonates with you, leave one line in the comments. Right, this question matters. Because beyond this point, the simulation enters its most critical phase, where acceptance turns into consequence, and the future reveals whether control can ever replace freedom without something breaking beneath the surface. If you made it this far, it means the simulation stayed with you, and that matters. This channel exists to explore what if economy scenarios like this one, not offer easy answers, but to examine future predictions, alternate timelines, and the deeper forces shaping the global economy before they fully arrive. If you want to keep exploring these simulations, where economics, technology, and human choice collide, consider subscribing. It's a way to stay connected to this ongoing journey through possible futures, and to continue questioning what comes next. If this scenario truly made you pause and reflect, leave a short line in the comments, so I know you reached the end. Right? This future really made me think. And if you feel this kind of analysis deserves to reach more people who are asking similar questions, a simple like helps signal that these conversations matter. There's another simulation right here that connects directly with this one. Click and keep going with me there, because this timeline doesn't exist alone, and the next future might reveal an even deeper layer of what's coming.